Good morning.
Grand Rising is what it is. Grand Rising, everyone.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us. Happy almost, oops, let me turn the phone down. Happy almost winter solstice. I think we're going to make it there. I'm pretty sure that
I
we're
think
going to
we're
make
going to
it
make it there.
to the 21st. How's everyone doing? Hope everyone's well. The holiday season is intense. I'm sure everyone is feeling it. Everyone's feeling it. Christmas is a week away. We have a couple of announcements. Rolling into next year, we're really going to start having guests join us on the show. And our first guest is Cheryl Burke. I'm sure so many of you are familiar with her. She's from 26 seasons being on Dancing with the Stars. She's a mental health advocate, client of Jeff's. And we had an amazing interview with her. We're going to air that. We also had an awesome interrogation come through. We've had many interrogations come through, but we had an awesome interrogation come through from Scott and Jenna in Nova Scotia about their wellness business. And they're doing magical stuff there in Nova Scotia. So we're going to share all that with you guys. And we have Dana DeRay joining us. She's a very well-known actor and audition coach, and she's very much into spirituality and astrology and just a lot of interesting people. Chris Bledsoe and hopefully his son Ryan Bledsoe, they'll be joining us. So we're excited. We're really excited. We're gonna take this show into a little bit of a different direction. Yep.
Yeah, we're gonna turn up the volume a little bit. Yeah.
Pump up the volume. That's right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. So what's going on today, Jeff?
Oh man, all kinds of stuff. Well, today is actually kind of a good day. We've got the moon trining the sun, and that always happens twice every month. You get the dexter and sinister trines, meaning applying and separating. And this is good. You know, we're heading into the fourth quarter moon on Sunday. That'll happen right around 2:18 Pacific time in the afternoon. But the big one on the radar screen, this is what, we kind of had on the thumbnail, is the winter solstice. The winter solstice is so important. And when you look at that, I'll put this on the screen here, you can actually see that, we have 4 points that are exceedingly powerful that the ancients always looked at. The most powerful one, believe it or not, is the spring equinox. That's when the sun comes across the ecliptical plane of the Earth's orbit around the sun, which is when the days and nights are even. And of course, equinox is a Latinized term, which means equal. The days and nights are equal. Well, right now, we are at the lowest point, which is the winter solstice. You can see here on the very far right side of the screen. That's where, in the northern hemisphere at least, the sun appears to be the lowest in the sky. And of course, the days are shortest. Now, that actually happens right on the 21st, this Saturday. And Pacific time, it'll be about 1:21 a.m. in the morning. East Coast time is going to be 4:21 a.m. And of course, extrapolate wherever else you are in this country or in the world. But it's very powerful. And you can really feel these energies. When the winter solstice happens, the ebb is at the lowest. And it's interesting. I always, question the Gregorian calendar, which is, of course, what we are. The New Year's is always January 1st, right? And it's interesting because the sun kind of hangs in the sky for a couple of days right at the solstice points. And it's a very low ebb. I find, our energies are low. I notice a lot of clients are very emotional. We all tend to get more emotional. It's the holidays, it's Christmas, Hanukkah, and all that. And people tend to become really kind of depleted a little bit in energy. We get more tired. The days are shorter in the northern hemisphere, and the weather is definitely gets cold. That's when we really enter winter after this. So it's a time when I always like to pay more attention. I do a lot more reflexology, and I'm just more easy on myself, take it easier. Older people find that too. A lot of times this is a lower ebb of energy. And it's interesting because right after the winter solstice, we enter January 1st, and the sun starts climbing back up the ladder to, again, the point where we're going to move to the spring equinox, and then, of course, the summer solstice. So this never, ever stops. This is a never-ending game that is constantly going on for all of us. And again, you can see here on this little video, it's always going around. And as the ecliptical plane changes, again, we get the light moving up and down. So it's such a powerful thing. It's absolutely amazing how powerful the sun is. I mean, the sun is like the portal to the life force energy. And again, try living without the sun. It's so powerful. It's just a really, really powerful time. Now, here's the other flip side of the coin. The ancients would always look at, and this is actually in a number of very old texts, particularly the Astrology of the World. In fact, there are many different famous ancient astrologers who went back to the flood of Noah, and they would look at many different things with the Saturn-Jupiter conjunctions and the aspects to them. And again, like I told you, 2020 was such a huge one. We had not only COVID, but on the winter solstice of 2020, we had a really powerful 240-something year Saturn-Jupiter conjunction. And the world has really felt a shift since then. Well, this winter solstice, and this is my point, in these texts they had talked about, you cast a chart for the year. Again, the ancient beginning of the year was the spring equinox. Well, you cast them at the equinoxes and solstice points. And this winter solstice, I didn't like too much. And I'll show you why. I'm actually going to share the screen here. Let me see if I can get this going. And I'll put this up. And you will see here as I go into the program, and I'll show you this a couple different ways. This is the winter solstice using a sidereal zodiac. And you can see here, this is the eastern horizon in Washington, D.C., the District of Criminals. And notice what we've got here. We've got a moon directly opposite Saturn. In fact, you can see here, this is a great tool. This tells us the moon is opposing Saturn by 38 minutes of arc. With that's a very tight opposition. And oppositions to Saturn are never positive. So I think you can expect a lot of trouble with the government, the budgets. And again, like I said, Biden's running around the White House. Of course, it's probably not him. It's just somebody in the mask, pouring, gasoline all over everything and lighting it on fire as he leaves. I mean, clearly we have, like I said, a war between the globalists and the nationalists. And I think they're pretty pissed off right now that Trump won. And I think, we're going to see this war continue. They're not just going to, put their tail between their legs and go away. And even though the Congress and, the Senate and the House have been won, I think you're going to see a lot of dissension and a lot of pushback. And again, as I was saying, the owners at the top of the pyramid, these are the guys really running things, not the politicians. They are really wanting war. And I hope I'm wrong about this, but where this kind of relates to a lot of the drone things. I mentioned this yesterday. Mel and I filmed a show, which is going to come out, Mel Fabregas and Veritas. A lot of people know Veritas. And, you should watch that. It comes out January 2nd. And we got into some great discussions. And one of the things we were looking into is the drones. And we got into other really cool stuff, like what Tesla and many others have said, that we're in a simulation here almost in this reality system. Not that I think it's totally a simulation, but it is. It's like that. The matrix of astrology is really an interesting thing. So this winter solstice, to kind of add this up here, is not particularly good. The other thing that's going on is you have Jupiter squaring Saturn. Now, remember, I just mentioned a few minutes ago that the great ages always looked at the conjunctions and the aspects of Jupiter and Saturn. So we are now in the square of change, and that's what squares mean. They always mean change. When we start heading into this, next year. And of course, I think change is definitely the operative word here. I mean, when you look at, what's going on with, the new administration coming in, the resistance that's going on, the wars that are going on. And when you really look behind the scenes where everybody's, I think manipulating a lot of the finances, this is a very powerful, powerful time. And this winter solstice shows it. So we'll get through it. We always do. But this is not a particularly enlightening winter solstice from a global governmental standpoint. So I would, and again, we just heard yesterday this big blow up with, the House is not approving the budget. And there's all kinds of dissension. They want Trump to come in and try and negotiate it. And of course, even if they figure it out, it's got to go through the Senate. And again, bumbling, fumbling Biden and the people who really run this place behind it are doing everything they can to set up things, including selling border wall parts and everything else, to create as much dissension and trouble as they can as this new administration comes in. And, again, I think we'll get around it. And, another thing Mel Fabregas and I on Veritas got into yesterday, and I took a deep look-see into Donald Trump's chart. And remember, I've been saying he's in still grave danger. And I actually looked a little bit farther ahead. I don't think they're going to shoot bullets at him anymore. Next, we're going to see viral things. You can see water or food poisoning they might try on him. And I just hope his inner circle is as tight as it can be, because you're dealing with some people here. They don't care about the human race at all. It's literally a demonic force. We always get through and good always wins. But, there's a lot of headwinds coming at this administration from what I can see. And it's going to be a lot of subterfuge. Donald Trump has a solar arc. And those are called primary directions. Neptune opposing the moon. That is confusion and delusion. And that actually peaks out right around this March. But he's also got a bigger one. And that's Neptune opposing his birth chart sun at the midheaven over the next year and about 9 months. So this is, not to spread doom and gloom, because we want to be cheerful at the holidays, but I also like to shine a little light on the reality of what potentially could be going on. So it's definitely, a wonderful time when we go through the solstice and enjoying our loved ones and the holidays and all that, and the Christmas and Hanukkah. But it's also a time to be aware of what's going on. And the bigger picture I've been mentioning for so long is this Uranus traversing by retrograde and direct actions through the seven sisters of the Pleiades. And I got to tell you, very powerful every time. And I've mentioned this many times. I also mentioned it on Veritas. And that is, when it goes through, we see dissension in the world and wars. World War II happened on the last, transit of this over there. Before that was the Civil War. Before that, the Revolutionary. And if we keep going back and back and back, we find a lot of trouble. So let's hope it doesn't happen. I mean, we are evolving, and technology in the world and consciousness is expanding. And I am pleased that Pluto ingressed in the tropical zodiac into the sign of Aquarius, which I don't think is Aquarian age, but I do think it's going to bring transformation in a more positive, aware light. And that's probably why we're going to see so much dissension. I think Biden has pardoned just about everybody he's ever shook hands with that has anything that they don't want to have exposed on his way out the door. I mean, it's thousands. I was hearing that. Mel was telling me that yesterday on the show, and I didn't know the number, but it was like something like 8,000 or something like that. I don't know how Biden could even sign that many times. They just got rubber stamps probably for these pardons. But clearly, they're dusting their tracks to allow themselves not to be in any way held accountable for some of the things that have been going on. And of course, this is nothing new, folks. If we look back in history, most leaders have done this. And I think if we could uncover half the stuff that was done, not only in this government, but we went all the way back to the monarchies, that's why there's karma, right? And I always like the elements of karma. And, I think Clint actually said it best.
Deserves got nothing to do with it.
Trestle, 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 throne. Time for this one to come home.
And that's the laws of karma. It just keeps going on, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Deserves got nothing to do with it, huh? Yeah, I deserve this. I deserve that. Why isn't it happening? Why is this happening to me, not that? It is like a wash machine, definitely. Definitely.
you got to
definitely.
give Clint
Well,
credit. He's had some great lines. He really, really
yes,
has,
he has.
And I mean, I love this one too.
We all have it coming, kid.
And in some ways,
We all have it
might.
coming. Okay.
We all have it coming, kid.
Okay. Well, we've got something coming, right? I mean,
That's
it's
it.
interesting
Exactly.
because we each individual is on a different journey, right? Clearly.
Yeah, we sure are.
We all see that, and it's
Yeah.
so fascinating to me.
Yeah.
Now when I meet new people or just see people in the street, I'm always thinking, wow, you're on your own journey and it's got to be so interesting. And what a blessing it is. And even all the challenges. If you look at this journey as a blessing, or you wouldn't be here. We're all here for a reason, experiencing something, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And it's just so fascinating. We've got to touch on this bird flu virus. People are asking about it in the comments. Does it look, do we think, this is going to turn into the next COVID? First of all, it's like, it is a real thing, right?
Yeah,
it is stemming
they
from
got cattle
animals.
piled up along the fences on highways throughout Southern California in different places. Yeah. And they're
pure
killing, they're
insanity.
slaughtering animals left and right to get rid of this. And it hasn't jumped into the human sector yet, if you will.
A few workers have contracted it.
They're saying, it could.
A few workers have contracted it. And what's interesting, not interesting, it's all awful. But what's happened with this is the cows are contracting it from birds, right? This is what's happening. And now California,
they're worried about cats and dogs and everything else getting into it,
Well, that's how they learn about it. The cats on these farms will drink the cow's milk and then die. So then they started looking into it. But it's really something because it is a real thing. We all know that Gavin Newsom has now declared this a state of emergency. So he knows a lot more than he's saying. They're going to start testing all the milk and all that. But where does this lead us, right? We always talk about us and the effect things have on us. But what about these animals that are going through hell on earth, literally, to produce milk or to produce chicken or what we call chicken and beef and all these things?
Sure.
These animals are a part of consciousness. And
there's a lot going on.
It's a horror show. It really is when you look into it. So the question is, and I wanted to pose this question to the chart last night, is this going to really turn into, it already is a nightmare for the animals, but in terms of it becoming a worldwide virus.
Well, that's what I didn't like about this winter solstice, and I really do hope I'm wrong. Let me take a look since you're asking what I'm going to do. So I've got another computer over here. I'll kick a chart in and see. My first knee-jerk response here, hang on, is that I don't think it's going to turn into a COVID type of insanity. I really don't. And here, hang on, let me get this computer here to work. I call them computers, not computers, and because that's what they are. But just looking at this here, in the what I'm doing is I'm casting a prashna, also known as an interrogation chart, and I got to get around my microphone here so I can see what the heck I'm doing. The knee-jerk response, I would say, is it's not going to get like that. It could get a little severe, but in general, no. It's not going to get nearly to the level of a COVID situation.
Thank God.
That's what I would say. Yeah, let me make sure I'm right. I don't like it, though. I'll tell you what, there's trouble because we've got something I've been talking about, too. On January 2nd, we have retrograde Mars opposing Pluto. Plain English, expect more trouble on that one. And again, see, this is what I was referring to earlier, is the solstice and equinoctial points are not just changes in seasons, but they also are a powerful, powerful change in the energies of the world. And they've always been marked with that, point in time to look at, meaning astrologers would cast a chart on the equinoxes and solstice points. Now, there's a lot of rules to this. If you look into the ancient methods, you literally look at the spring equinox, and if it's a fixed sign ascending, you use that chart for the whole year, but you still note the solstices and equinoxes following. And you also note the new and full moons and other major transits and conjunctions. So it's a little bit of a complex analysis, no question, but powerful. And again, I don't like this winter solstice. I think we're going to see a number of things coming at us. And, clearly the moon is the public, and it's opposed the Saturn. See, again, I should state more clearly, the solstices and equinoctial points were like birth charts throughout the year. So you would cast the winter solstice to look at the final quarter between the winter solstice and the spring equinox. In other words, it gives you a look-see outlook over the next 3 months, you see, through the quarters. There's 4 quarters with 3 months each. So this one, I'm not liking it. And again, what do we got? An administration coming in. We've got the old regime here shaking in their boots. You got Biden rubber stamping pardons as fast as he can. I'm sure they've hired extra people to just stamp them, right? And they probably just run them through a printer that has a signature on it. They'd have to, because I don't think Biden could sign 3 pieces of paper a day. He's so worn out. He looks more feeble than ever. And God bless him, or something like that. But I can tell you, this is a not a good time. And I hope, we've got wars that need to be resolved. You're going to see Tom Homan and ICE come at this immigration thing with a vengeance. And believe me, that I'm worried, when you look at, the various different riots we saw in 220 forward, a lot of this Antifa stuff is funded. I mean, these people were very carefully funded. I mean, they had their own U-Hauls, and they were equipped with all kinds of riot, paraphernalia. And I wouldn't be surprised at anything coming up here this next year. I really wouldn't.
Yeah, I wouldn't either.
And Trump, again, you can see it. He's, I got to give him credit. Whether you like Donald Trump or hate Donald Trump, this guy was so lucid in a live press conference he gave down in Mar-a-Lago. And you can see he's really fatigued and tired. That's because he's got Neptune opposing his moon over the next 3 months. But with that withstanding, that man was answering questions so clearly and lucidly. Before the reporter would finish the question, he was coming out with answers. So, he really is sharp at 78 years old. And again, I always mention, look at Bill Clinton. He's 78 years old. He's a shaking, feeble old man. He still has his faculties. But Donald Trump is like a freight train, even when he's tired. He's just right there.
I mean, 70, can I just say 78 isn't even that old, though?
Not that old, no.
No.
Yeah.
It's not like
but
90.
People look at their health is failing depending on how they eat and take care of themselves in their 40s and 50s. I mean, we see people dropping dead. A lot of people have a much trouble at 58 to 59. That's your second Saturn return.
Yeah.
And, that's a big shift on us. And, that's what I call entering Act 3. Life is like a 3-act stage play. Act 1 is when you're born to about 28 and 29. That's your first Saturn return. Everybody gets this. And then from 28 to 29 up to 58 or 59, you have your second Saturn return. Why? Saturn takes about 28 and a half to 29 years. It can go up to 29 and a half to go around your birth chart. And these are major, I call it the hour hand on the clock of life, because it is. Yeah. And then you're going to get your third Saturn return in your mid 80s. That'll usually come in around 84 to 86, give or take. And then I call that the reprise and the exit music, but we should be able to continue longer,
Reprising the exit music. Oh my God.
But if you take the 3-act stage play, analogy,
I get it.
Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, and then you got the reprise and the exit music.
Yeah. But it does seem like a lot of people pass on that second Saturn return, or they
have a lot of trouble. Yeah.
Have a lot of trouble. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And a lot of people find success on the first Saturn return.
They do, and 29. They can find it on the second too. It's really a mysterious thing, because when you look at ancient astrology and Vedic astrology, the combinations are never the same for every soul. Every soul has an imprint. We call it the birth chart that's stunningly unique, that no one's the same. I mean, when you know, that's why I always really bust on the sun sign, love, light, and clueless astrology. Why? You can't take your sun sign. Everybody knows their sun sign. But when you look at the intricacies of traditional and Vedic and Nadi astrology, there's no two charts the same. Virtually impossible. When you start looking at, and see, then you got to look at this, you know, this is the lunar mansions. And these are astounding because, and so by the way, I should mention also too, that today we're going to feel a shift, and everyone can kind of pay attention to this. The moon in the sidereal zodiac is going to leave Cancer. It's actually going to do that today, right around 12:24, right after noon, 24 minutes after Pacific time. Now, if you're East Coast, add, you know, your 3 hours. If you're Midwest, add 2, and Mountain Time, add 1, or wherever else you are in the world, extrapolate accordingly. But the moon will actually leave Cancer and it will go into Leo. Now, that's a big deal. Why? You might say, well, okay, great, it does that every month. But why that's powerful is because it's leaving a water sign in the sidereal zodiac and hitting Leo. So a lot of fire. And that's called Gandanta by sun. And what it means is that you're shifting not only the sidereal sign, but you're also shifting a lunar mansion. See, it's going from, I believe it's Astrologer here. Let me look here. Let me do that one more time. Yeah, it's leaving, Astrologer and going into Maga. I don't know if you can see where my cursor is here, but that's very, very powerful. And I got to tell you, so I'll make that a little bit bigger if I can. But you can see here, Astrologer is here, and it leaves and goes into Ketu, which is also the lunar mansion called Maga. And that's not Maga like Trump thing. This is Magha. It's got an H in there. So I don't want to get accused here of, supporting something that isn't there. But anyhow, the bottom line is very powerful. So, and again, this happens every month, but when you look at the confluence of what's coming up here, Mars retrograde, you've got Mercury just went direct, but the big one is the Uranus in the sky hanging, which is slowing down slowly but surely up until February 23rd, when it stations and goes direct and starts heading back to that really nasty fixed star, Caput Algol, as well as other fixed stars in the Pleiades Seven Sisters, constellation. So let's hope, we can get some negotiations and peace. And, again, you're dealing not just with politics here, you're dealing with the owners shoveling money into the furnace one way or another. And it makes money. And it rearranges power structures in the world. And I think we're going to see a lot of power structures. It's quite interesting how Trump was maintaining that my camera will come right back on. Trump was making jokes about the 51st state of, Canada. Don't be surprised if you see absolutely tremendous changes over this next 4 years. Something like that is not totally an impossibility. And it's interesting how Trudeau came down and met with Trump. And, there's a lot of stuff going on. And he's also hinted the same thing with Mexico. Now, that would be absolutely unprecedented if something happened. But don't be surprised if some unprecedented things happen. Stuart Swerdlow, who I've known for many, many years, he's a psychic and an intuitive, and he said see something like this possibly happening, where we could see a consolidation of the world moving in totally different directions. China's supposed to make some huge announcement that's going to change the course of the world and humanity. We'll see what that is. And again, this winter solstice is happening on a moon opposition Saturn. And you've got a Jupiter squaring Saturn that will actually perfect. When does that happen? It's actually on the 24th, the day before Christmas. So very, very powerful. And these are no trivial things. And even though, we look at the news and all the stuff coming at us, it's very interesting how these celestial influences really have a powerful impact on us. I always mention Benjamin Franklin was an interesting guy. He had what we call the Poor Richard's Almanac. He actually used that as a pseudo name. But Benjamin Franklin, our founding fathers, were really into the cycles and the energies of astrology. And I always mention, our capital was, and many other things. If you look at the layout of Washington, D.C., of course, now it's the District of Criminals, but it's actually laid out in a sacred geometrical lineup. And we see this with many old temples in Egypt, some of the cathedrals in Europe. They would use these means and fees and golden ratios that are exceedingly powerful energetically. And look at the pentagon. Do you know what that is? It's a pentagram. So even though they have the interior of the pentagram shape as the pentagon. So there's a lot more esoteric symbolism of the United States. And I had mentioned many times, let's see if I can find it. Yeah, this is the symbols of the seal of the United States. And again, you've got the number 13 here. You've got the capstone. You've got 72, the 72 angels, the 13 letters. I mean, there is a lot of cryptic stuff that goes on behind the scenes here with world leaders, and particularly the United States. And one thing's for sure, the United States has been the dominant de facto power in the world. There's a diagram. I should find this here. I was going to put it up on the screen. I forgot it. It shows the expenditures of countries. It was put up by Statica.com. And what's amazing is the United States now, and this is only what they publish, is spending almost $1 trillion a year on military. And that's the published, it's just short of it. It's like 900 something billion. And when you look at China is 1/3 of what we spend. Russia is about maybe an 1/8 or a 9th of what we spend. The rest of the world collectively, and maybe not every country, but all of your major countries, if you put them all together, we spend more. And that's what they tell us. And you got to remember, the boys behind the scenes of the Federal Reserve print the money. So they can spend, money's no object. They can print as much as they want. And I've mentioned this drone thing, I think is Black Ops. And Chris Bledsoe, I was just listening to him this morning, and I hope we have him on soon, who, if anyone doesn't know who he is, he's wrote the book, UFO of God. And he really believes that a lot of these extraterrestrial so-called UFOs, UAPs, might be angelic forces. And I have to agree with them. I think there's a plethora of things going on between demonic and angelic forces. And I also believe that there are terrestrial beings on this planet that have been here probably longer than we have. Admiral Byrd went under the Antarctic area. There's a big hole down there back in 1946 with a squadron funded by the U.S. military. And they were brought down and they were told by these beings, they said, look, we now know you guys are nuclear. And if you try and cause a global nuclear war in exchange, we will step in, we will stop it. And this is not unique, these drones that we're seeing right now. All the way back into the 40s, ever since we came up with, the whole the projects with, Los Alamos and Manhattan projects is what I meant to say. They have been watching us, and drone reports like this have been going on all over the world for a long, long time. And in fact, I think way before 1946, but they appear to be looking, I think there's a black ops going on with some of these drones, combined with these so-called extraterrestrial UFOs watching them. So, and it's interesting the places that they're showing up. And a lot of people are seeing this. Even in Tucson last night, we had a friend, she filmed it on her property, and amazing. And, there's a lot of military in Tucson. I know I used to live there, and I used to watch these new jets rocket literally over us. My son and I'd be swimming in the pool. And by the time I'd hear the sound, I'd look up and the jet was over the horizon. And I used to ask a friend, he worked at Raytheon. I said, how the hell are you guys flying this fast without creating sonic booms? Because I remember back in the 60s, all the sonic booms. We used to hear them, if anybody remembers. And he said, "Oh, we're throwing plasma over the wings." So in other words, they are. I mean, the military stuff that's going on and the black ops is really eerie. And again, the owners seem to be funding this. So thank God, literally, and I hope Chris Bledsoe is absolutely right, and I believe he is, that some of these are angelic beings, or there are much superior forces that are keeping things within the curbs, if you will, on the highway of craziness, because clearly we are in very dangerous times and have been ever since we've acquired the kind of weaponry that is available. And you know, everyone talks about nuclear weapons, and they are devastating. I mean, I don't think we have any idea even what a light nuke would do. Hiroshima and Nagasaki was literally at the very beginning of the development of this stuff. The stuff we have now, I mean, creepy. And they've perfected the neutron bomb. But you look at chemical warfare and all this other stuff. Thank God we've got curbs here keeping us, you know, again, from total wipeout. And I don't think that's going to be allowed to happen. And this is a very interesting thing. I actually did a lot of research into Maelstrom Air Force Base and many other UFO quote unquote phenomena. And we found that clearly this did coincide with celestial influences. And again, the whole matrix of astrology and all of that is quite interesting because, you know, again, I always mention here, and this is one of my favorite diagrams that I put up, that, you know, the Yetziratic worlds is where astrology, astronomy, the heavens, as we would call them, or the multiverses are. And the souls are way, way up here. So, you know, the whole universal, you could say, or you could say celestial influences of the heavens seems to be a mixture of good and evil. But if you look at the top of the pyramid, there's a force far above that, and that's the creational divine forces. And that's why evil will never fully win, even though it creates a hell of a lot of trouble. And that is the operative word, a hell of a lot of trouble. It clearly happens. Yeah, but sure. The good news is, you know, it does appear that we always get through. So, you know,
one way or another.
Yeah. And I mean, again, you know, we're all going to take the pipe known as death. Everyone's going to exit this physical body. And, you know, I think the biggest thing that we talked a lot about that on Veritas with Mel, and that is, you know, what is consciousness? It's not localized to the body. We are spiritual beings having a physical experience. I mentioned that a lot. And, you know, again, one of my favorite diagrams that I always reference here, and this kind of really shows it, where, you know, you could say consciousness is below this big, thick dashed line. And our perception of reality actually is blocked from the upper portions of the souls, at least during this time period in this era, if you could say. And there's what they call yugas and great ages. And for some reason, we have been really blocked from accessing past lives and the astral planes, etc. And I always mention, again, one of my more favorite diagrams is this one. The lower conscious mind in the Aramaic and Hebrew is known as the nefesh, and it's believed to form right when we are spanked on the rear end in the delivery room, or whatever you want to say, however we were born. And at that point forward, we are now kind of assimilating our perception of reality. This is why mind controls a reality. This is why we're all mind controlled by what we believe. And some of it might be very accurate. Some of it might not be. And of course, this is why so much focus is put on the youth, so that, you know, we get mind-bending propaganda to shape the youth in the direction that it's wanted. And, you know, the world in a lot of ways can be very misleading. And the more we tend to grow wiser, as, you know, we do in our age, but also the incarnation comes into play. And this is where, again, you can see a lot of this in Vedic astrology, where, you know, there are a lot of old souls, and they're not going to be hoodwinked like many others can be. And I think you're seeing a very dangerous time right now where a lot is going to get exposed coming in. And again, the celestial ingress of Pluto into Aquarius might have something to do with this. Also, the Saturn-Jupiter square coming in right after the winter solstice. That'll actually happen this Sunday. No, not Sunday, on the 24th, literally Christmas Eve day. So very, very powerful, because these energies always have an effect on consciousness on the earth, and people aren't buying it. We're just not buying the crap that they're handing us anymore. And with social media and everything else, a lot of things are getting more exposed. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. And I'm glad about some of it. Yeah.
Yes.
The true stuff. I'm glad about that. Let's jump to a couple comments, Jeff.
Sure.
First of all, remember last week, Kasmir brought up Greater Israel, and we weren't 100% sure what he was referring to. Well, he's saying it's about Israel's plan to expand its territory east.
I've heard all about that. Yeah. And that's the 7. Yeah, there was Tucker Carlson just did a pretty good podcast on that, talking how this plan has been in play to basically make the whole Middle East Greater Israel. Well, I tell you, the only thing I can say to that is, I haven't cast a chart on it, but I can tell you Nostradamus and many other prophets had always discussed that all roads lead to Israel. And, of course, we've been hearing about Armageddon for a long, long time. No one knows exactly when that's going to happen. I certainly hope that this Uranus traversing the Pleiades right now isn't something to do with that.
Oh, God.
I hope not. But, I have to say, you got to follow the money. And again, these bankers at the top of the pyramid, they are very interesting what they have funded in the past. I mean, you look back, again, I always mention, I saw bonds in a Federal Reserve or in a federally secured vault, stacked to the ceiling, 4 pallets full of them. They were all gold-backed, various bonds, utility bonds like electric bonds, water, gas and all that, issued to the Republic of Germany in 1933, callable in 1945 by the U.S. Treasury Department. So who funded Hitler? Who funded Japan?
Right.
And, this is just a couple of look-sees over the, or I should say behind the curtain, as Toto pulled it back. And I can tell you, follow the money, follow
always. Always.
Yep. You betcha.
What I want to jump
I also wanted to get to Sherry Bodell's question. She had asked a question. Yeah, she had asked a question, and I actually have that over on this computer here. Last week she was asking, "Are we in danger here?" I looked at that
in Los Angeles. Yeah,
right, in Los Angeles. I would have to say, let me come back to that because I have her question right here.
A lot of people actually ask that question about where they're living.
You bet, and all of us are concerned wherever we live, in the world or the country. And I would tend to say this looks protected. I don't think we're going to see. Now, we might see some scamdemics or, pop-ups of bird flu and such like that, but I don't see us getting nuked here. I have to say, when I look at, where would that happen? Mel had asked a question yesterday about a false flag. And, it's interesting. These drones are concentrated up in the Northeast. That looks like a place it could happen. New York, New Jersey, Upper East Coast area is a possibility. So let's hope not. Again, a lot of people accuse astrology of predicting the future. It's really not. What it is its energy. And energy can be altered. If it couldn't, we wouldn't all be sitting here listening on technologies, right? So we have the capacity to alter this. And I think, again, a lot of people hate Trump. I personally think, and that was another question that Mel had asked on the show, was, is Elon Musk, RFK, and Trump a Trojan horse? In other words, do the owners still control them? Is what he's really getting at. And I kind of got no. There's influences, and I think you're seeing here a war between the globalists and the nationalists, but I think the nationalists won. And I'd have to say no. I mentioned reverse speech is a really interesting thing. A lot of people kind of poo-poo it. But reverse speech is where you take the collective speeches that people, or sentences that they say, and you can reverse it, and you can pick up various subconscious things in there. And most of the people, and I've actually done a little bit on Trump, I'd have to say he is a very well-intended person. And again, to quote Clint Eastwood, I always loved, what Trump said. He said, I don't need to be doing this. He said, I could be getting oranger on my golf courses, playing golf. And, again, it's almost kind of like, I always love the movie, The Outlaw Josie Wales. And it's this little scene is.
You can't get them all, Josie? That's a fact.
Well, how come you doing this then?
I got nothing better to do.
Maybe that's it. He's got nothing better to
do. Right.
Right. And again, I'm not trying to sit here because I know it'll piss a lot of people off if you're trying to promote Trump. But I'd have to say, everything I've seen from the astrology, the reverse speech, I think he's a real deal. I really do. And I think he truly, he's not perfect. Trump has made a lot of people irritated because he's got Mars in the ascendant. But I'm noticing a much more calmer Trump now than he was 4 years ago, and respectful too. He seems to be much more courteous and respectful. And he's, I think, learned that his abrasiveness has actually caused a lot of waves in the past. Maybe. So I think he's changed a little bit. And that would also show in his astrology. He's moved into an Antardosha that's much, much better. And he's also got Jupiter transiting his midheaven and his 11th house. The danger I see is these progressions that he has there. They're called primary solar arcs. With the Neptune opposing the moon and the sun, not good. See, Trump was born right on a full moon. He was actually born during a Kalasarpa yoga, which is really intense. Anybody who's born on a Kalasarpa yoga, many of Vedic astrologers I've studied with, it's the wrath of God. No, it isn't. It's a very powerful time for that soul to experience. And Trump was born during that. And whether you love him or hate him, he's a powerful person. And he's got one of the most powerful charts I've ever seen in terms of leadership capability. And I think the Mars in the ascendant has caused a lot of abrasion. He was pretty pushy in his younger years. But I think you're seeing a different Trump now. And he's actually in a rough time and a roller coaster road over this next couple of years. And don't be surprised if this time they don't do this with bullets. They're going to try and use other methods. Again.
How did you see that? You told me that last night. How did you see that in his chart about the poisoning that he's got to watch out for that?
Neptune. See, Neptune is always the planet of subterfuge. If you look at Neptune, it's this crescent of the moon bent upwards over the cross. So it's a very mysterious planet. Even astronomers will tell you it's full of gas. It's very hard to analyze. And it's a very mysterious energy. And that's exactly when you have Neptune in your birth chart, squaring Mars, opposing or squaring the lights, meaning the sun or the moon. See, the moon is emotions, and it's also subterfuge. So he could find that, they try little things like poisoning him or hitting him. I mean, look at Putin did to one of his opponents. They poisoned him. So things like this are a possibility coming up here, and it's very dangerous. And even if they don't poison him, it really saps your energy. I've had so many clients over the years. My mother actually turned me on to the Neptune scenario. I call it the Neptune syndrome, where if you have Neptune squaring Mars, I remember I had one entertainer, very famous person about 20 years ago. They go, "What the hell's going on? I'm like in the Twilight Zone." I said, "Well, you got Neptune squaring Mars." And as soon as the aspect was over, it was a transit. Everything cleared up. Everything was perfect. Just like you, Ella, you have Neptune coming right over you in location astrology over your ascendant. And, it's been challenging for you. So, it's very, very powerful when you look at these energies, and she's pointing down right now.
Sucks. It sucks.
Oh, it does. It's suckaroo big time. And when Neptune, here's another example. I've had clients who've had Neptune squaring, conjuncting, or opposing the sun. And they run to the doctors, all these strange little ailments. They do tons of blood tests and MRIs and everything else, and they can't figure out what's wrong. Well, try this, take that. And nothing seems to help
Neptune.
it. And Neptune is a very strange planet.
Oh, yeah.
And when it mixes up in your birth chart by transit and hard aspects, it can be the twilight zone. It can be very challenging.
Yeah.
And I've had it happen in my own life.
Mind. Yep, it really does.
Yep, it really does.
It really does.
You know, I could see the fatigue in Trump when he was in the news conference. Even though his mind was exceedingly lucid, I could tell he looked tired. He's never looked tired like that. And that's Neptune opposing his moon. That actually gets stronger up until this spring, and then it'll separate. But over the next 2 years, he's got Neptune opposing the sun. So this is powerful stuff. See, he was born with the sun and the moon opposite in the birth chart. So if Neptune's hitting one, it's going to oppose the other. See, so it's all energy, and no two people are the same. Nobody's the same. Again, I think this is the mysteries of the soul, and you know, many people. You know, George Norrie asked me a really good question once. He said, "Jeff, what the heck is astrology? Why does it even work?" And I said, "I think it's a matrix of portals that are interconnecting." I always say God created time so everything wouldn't happen at once. And I really believe it's an interaction uniquely to each soul. And again, the astronomers laugh at angels and spirits and demons, but I really believe that they are definitely interconnected. They say every planet has the ability to act in creation, sustainment of creation, and destruction. And they do. And they all act in varying degrees, depending on, again, the fine-tunement of the arrangement in your birth chart. We're all like very special, extremely complex tuning forks. It's very, very interesting.
Yeah.
Very, very,
very interesting.
Yeah.
Let me
beyond analysis, actually, quite frankly. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Let me ask one more question, Jeff. I know you have to go in a few minutes. This is from Achilles. Hi, Achilles. Happy holidays.
Oh, wow. Achilles, yeah.
Achilles is asking, does the chart show that Canada will be the 51st state?
Well, that's a really good question. I haven't actually looked at that specifically, but we could. Boy, it would be nice. I know Achilles wouldn't mind that probably. And I mean, every Canadian I've talked to, there might be one or two, but everyone I've ever talked to, they sure don't like Trudeau. You know, a lot of people have heard the reports and rumors that he might be a descendant or even possibly the son of Fidel Castro. And he certainly acts like it, I'll give it that. That would be, you know, I think very pleasing for, and you know, really Trump made a good statement about that, where it would really be wonderful to integrate the resources and the economics and the military protection and the freedoms, most importantly, that the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, you know, allows Americans to be extended, you know. So, and this is interesting because Stuart Swalwell was mentioning the same thing about how there could be potentially a unification of the North American continent. Let's take a look at that. You're not seeing what I'm doing. I'm actually going to cast a chart on that and see here. So here, I'll just put Achilles so I know who asked. Will Canada integrate to the USA as the 51st state? Is that a possibility? That'd be awesome if it was. Then I can come see you, Achilles, and not have to have my passport. Last time I went to Canada was in the mid 80s. Oh my God. I felt like I was moving into, you know, Nazi Germany. And I thought, what are you doing here? Well, your papers, please. I'm like, wow. And I had a bunch of electronic equipment with me. I was actually heading up to Anne Murray's studio in Halifax, a beautiful place, and unbelievable. The singer Anne Murray, and or the studio that she was singing at. And man, they were like the Gestapo. So not right away, but you know what? It does show that there could be a possibility to it. They're going to try and stop it, is what it shows. And then when you say who's they, again, the owners look like they're in here. But I'd have to study this a bit more. It's not an impossibility. That's what's really interesting. It is not a no. it is a possibility. And I'd have to say, if you stack the cards here, on the scale, it leans towards it's a possibility. So I'll examine that more. But boy, that would be exciting.
It would be.
Oh man, I would love to be able to just drive into Canada. I mean, that's one thing I love about the United States. I've always loved that. I've always been such an avid motorcyclist. And back in the 70s, I actually took a trip down old Route 66, not all of it, but along it, a lot of it, back in the 70s to visit my mother in Arizona. I loved it. I mean, there's nothing like the road. There's something about America. It's the road, everything's the road. And in fact, I've always dreamed, if you guys remember, there was a TV series. It was
Then Came Bronson.
Then Came Bronson. I love that TV series. It was in 1969. I remember we used to watch it. And what was so cool about it is there was a statement he made. I'm trying to find it right now.
Whenever Jeff's talking about motorcycles and says TV series, I know he's referring to that. Then Came Bronson. He's always telling me about it.
Yeah, here it is. Just listen to what he says. See if it'll play.
Taking a trip? What's that? Taking a trip. Yeah. Where to? Oh, I don't know. Wherever I end up, I guess.
That's the best. Yeah, where you going? I don't know. Wherever I end up, I guess.
Wherever I end up, I guess. You love
wherever
that.
I end up, I guess. Yeah, that was Michael Parks, who just died. Michael Parks was in Kill Bill. Quentin Tarantino loved him. He was a great actor. He really was. He died at 78 years old. But that came out in 1969. Classic line. And they actually canceled the series after about, I think, the first season. And the reason why Michael Parks actually quit, he said, I ain't doing this because they wanted more violence and more sex. And he says, no, this is about the freedom of the American road. And what a great series, And he had a hit song going down that long, lonesome highway. And it really struck a chord with so many motorcyclists. And I'm sure if anybody's listening who's a motorcyclist who grew up in the 60s, they definitely knew that one. And the classic line, where you heading?
It's a good premise for a show.
Oh, it's a great premise. Yeah.
It's a great premise for a show. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Jeff. Laura Lynn, we'll get to your question next time. She's asking if Elon will be the one designing and ushering the new world digital currency. So let's look at that, Jeff, next time.
Yeah, you bet. That we definitely will. No question about that. And again, remember what Clint said.
Deserves got nothing to do with it.
Dressel, 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 drum. Time for this one to come home.
So there you have it. So anyways, folks.
I don't know what my Neptune wants to do with that. The Neptune over my head right now. I don't know what it wants to do with that.
Exactly.
But,
yeah. Well, thanks, everybody. Have a good solstice, and we'll see you. Actually, what's interesting is next week on Thursday. Are we going to be able to do it on Thursday? Because I don't know, because I was looking at the calendar here, and
Thursday is the day after Christmas, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the day after Christmas. So yeah, we'll do it. What the heck? Why not?
We'll
see what presents everybody got, right? All right. Okay. You all have a great week.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Yeah, do a meditation on the solstice. It's a great time to counteract these clowns.